So that's just one case, one example, one country, one campaign. So that's distribution. I provide a variety of lengths. They're always very short, but some of them are 15 seconds, 20 seconds, 30 seconds, and 1 minute long. They are on a variety of topics. So for example, on the buzz and bite malaria one, there are 30 animated spots. 8 of them are on malaria and how it's transmitted and how it is not transmitted. For example, we have a spot that says malaria is not caused by rain, because some of our research in Africa suggested that some people think malaria is caused by rain. So the first spot in the malaria prevention one simply says malaria is caused by mosquitoes, period. That's it. It's as simple as that. Then the other 22 spots are on the use of bed nets, insecticide-treated, long-lasting bed nets. We have a variety of possibilities in terms of what we can do. When I launched my latest campaign, which I'll show you as well, which is called No Excuses, a domestic violence campaign, I always give a press conference at the UN to launch these. And when I launched it last year at the UN, a journalist asked me, he said, well, you've been here now, several times with these campaigns. Do you think that you can make a difference on make a campaign on any topic? And I thought for a while, yes, actually, we can make mass communications and make a difference on any topic that you can think of. So all of you who are working out in the field, and I'm not a field worker, I simply create tools to give you who are out in the field, all of you out in the field who are working, think of the topics that you have, that you're working on, and that how you think, what you think can be done. And I can devise a mass communications program that will help you on that topic. It doesn't really matter what the topic is. Look, if I can do it on things like rape and sexual violence on a global scale, we can do it on any topic that you can think of. They are perfect for mobile because they're short, because they're animated. So in China, for example, the Free Amigos HIV/AIDS one, which now exists, by the way, in 45 languages, so we can reach 80% of the world's population in their own language. Somebody, not me, somebody put it on a phone, apparently in China, one spot, and it's now in over 100 million phones, apparently. I have no evidence to that. I've simply been told that. But it is possible to pass them from phone to phone, especially from BlackBerry to BlackBerry. It's more difficult. It used to be more difficult with an iPhone, but now that they've started iMessaging, it's not as difficult with iPhones. And finally, obviously, it can be interactive, especially if you create them for mobile. The next frontier, the opportunities that I see, the next frontier has got to be multi-platform. There is no such thing as creating media anymore that is not multi-platform. It has to be on a variety of methods. It has to be content-rich multimedia. It has to have interactive content. And I think people have spoken about that this morning. It is, for the next generation, mobile is the way to go for internet users. So pretty soon, it hasn't happened yet, but pretty soon, more people will access the internet through mobile technology than they will through a computer. And that will happen in the next couple of years for the next generation. More people will access the internet through mobile than a normal computer, which is the traditional way. New technologies, I mentioned, allow a projection from mobile. It's accessible to all in terms of cost and reach. I bought a phone in India fairly recently. It's a smartphone made in China. Guess how much it costs? It costs the equivalent of about $16. It's a smartphone made in China and India. I actually, when I go to India, I use an Indian cell. I mean, it costs like a fraction of a cent, not even 1 cent to make a call, 0.006 cents or something like that to make a call from India. It is the cheapest, absolutely one of the cheapest. I've been to 142 countries now. And India has got to be one of the cheapest to make a call from. Well, within India and China, you've got over 2 billion people out of our 7 billion people. So we can make it in India and China very cheaply, where the cost is so low. We can reach hundreds of millions of people. It is, iMessaging and SMS are now becoming free. As you know, iMessaging is free. So if you have an internet connection, you don't pay anymore for SMS. In many countries, SMS is now becoming obsolete, and iMessaging and other technologies like that are absolutely free. So we're down to 2 or 3 operating systems in the world. That's it. So it makes it much easier for content creators like me to make content, because there are only 2 or 3 systems in the world: the iOS, which is the Mac system, Android, which is Google, and Windows, which is Microsoft. There are now global brands, so that when you have global brands, you can create content for these global brands just once. Content like Facebook and LinkedIn and Skype and Google. Yes, of course, China has Baidu, and China has very different ones. India has different ones. Africa has different equivalents of Google. But essentially, the world is moving towards global brands on the internet, which makes it much easier to make content. Health prevention is absolutely a high priority. As I go around the world and talk to governments and talk to the IOs and the NGOs, I think that health prevention is becoming one of the highest priority in terms of new media content creation. And then you have power of apps, the applications. And I've given one example, which is iNetra, which was developed by the MIT Media Lab group. And basically, you can use it to sort of gauge, I don't know how accurate it is, but to see whether a person needs glasses or not. It's just one app I've given you as an example. There are many, many different apps that are being created around the world, some on a commercial basis and some on a non-commercial basis. I think that there has to be a focus on innovation. And I've been surprised that this morning we haven't really talked that much about innovation, but there has to be a focus on innovation. It has to be highly creative and innovative. Look, the creation of media is not a science. Ultimately, the creation of media is an art. If you go and ask Steven Spielberg, is your next movie going to be a hit? He's going to shrug and he's going to say, I don't know. Because there isn't any scientific basis for him to project whether or not Steven Spielberg is going to make the next hit. He simply makes a movie that he does with the best of his ability, and he creates it, and he gets it out there. So my suggestion to you is, when you're creating media, use media creators. Don't use doctors, don't use lawyers, don't use everybody else. Use media creators, because they're the people who can understand audiences. They're the people who can create interactive, compelling media that is going to get your message out. I see a lot of people trying to create media who don't have any knowledge about media. No heart surgeon ever asked me how to do heart surgery, but so many doctors think that they can create media. It's quite amazing. Keep your attention of the viewer. Highly visual. It has to be highly visual. It has to be easy to absorb. It can be viewed repetitively, and much of my work is designed to be viewed over and over and over again. It is to bring the person to the audience. It can be interactive. It can be open source and shared, which was mentioned as a priority this morning in the report. It can be continuously improved. Let me give you an example. The malaria prevention program that I created is really about trying to prevent people from getting malaria. And it's therefore for the 107 countries that have malaria. But the Dutch NGO came to me and said, well, this is great. We don't have malaria in Holland, but we do want to urge people to buy bed nets to send to other countries. So could we use this? I said, sure. All we had to do was use one of them and change the tagline at the end of it and said, buy a bed net instead of use a bed net. So it was fairly easy for us to change the content and give it to Holland for their needs, even though they don't have malaria. You can't do that with a brochure. You can't instantly change a brochure with one sentence and and do it. You have to reprint the whole thing, and it costs a lot, and so on. So all the printed material, this is much more flexible. Multimedia is much more flexible in terms of being able to change and adapt and improve the quality and the content of what you're doing. Whoops, 55 seconds left. It can be easily added to and altered. It can be used by other means. It is accessible directly by the end user. It's distance learning enabled. It overcomes educational limitations. It overcomes barriers if created well, and that's a big if. And it creates opportunities for social entrepreneurs. These I see as the challenges. Creating the materials, overcoming the barrier. Creating the material is by far the biggest challenge. Overcoming barriers, and I'm going to talk about that if I have some time. Creating a focus on innovation, gaining acceptance from end users, overcoming competition. There is far too much competition within the NGO community on making media. Everybody wants to create their own media, and it drives me absolutely up a wall. When I go to international meetings and I sit there, especially at the UN in Geneva, for example, and every NGO gets up and says, this is what we did in creating media. I mean, I don't understand it quite often. I don't understand why there's not more sharing, why there's not more usage. Was that actually 20 minutes that I had? It says my time is up, but I'm not sure it was 20 minutes, was it? Okay, I shall keep going quickly. It's easy to version into multiple languages, is localized, and a big challenge is financing. Almost all my work that I do is on a volunteer basis. I've put together teams to create these on a volunteer basis. We hand them out free of charge. Either my assistant or I gets out the DVDs or the tapes or gets it online, and people can download it for free. The cost of creation is fairly significant if anybody ever paid for it. There is a difficulty of researching on a global basis some of these problems. We have to get it out around the world. I've talked about distribution in terms of what I've done, but it's also always a challenge to get the media seen by everybody, and it is very difficult to evaluate, and that drives bureaucrats absolutely bananas, and that's why I don't get funded. But when you work on issues like rape prevention, I don't know how you do a baseline study saying to a man, are you going to rape your wife tonight? And then he says yes or no, and then you're going to show him some media, and then you're going to say, now you're going to rape your wife? It's very difficult to do. That's why I say, ultimately, media creation is an art and not a science. Okay, I'm going to go through some of these. These are some of the barriers. I'm going to let you read them since I'm out of time. This is some of the barriers that I have to deal with, and this is just very few of them. I have a list of over 50 barriers that we have to get around. I'm going to go through some of the short-form animation, but I don't have much time. Modern animation actually started in France. The animated PSAs took off in the 60s. Sesame Street is a very good example, I think, of early animation. Then Mina was a series created by UNICEF in Kathmandu, out of their Kathmandu office. It was trying to get girls to stay in school in India. It was so successful that they created an African version called Sarah. And then the last one is something I worked on as well with UNICEF called the Cartoons of Children's Rights, where we took the rights of the Convention on Rights of Children. We animated every single right in it, and 2,200 broadcasters played them around the world. So that is some of my work. Now, I don't actually create educational work, and that's a difference. I create behavior change communications. There is an important difference between educating somebody and trying to get them to change their behavior. And there are very, very few people in the world who create behavior change communications. I'm not going to go through them. The one distinguishing part of what I do is I use humor to bring people to the serious point. I create what is called a cultural shift, where we reach beyond two people, reach beyond these barriers as human beings, where we share commonalities as human beings, we share values in common. Human beings are rational people. Every person is reachable. Every issue can be tackled. Every person can be influenced. and every person's behavior can be changed. This is I'm just going to go through this. You can read it. I'm not going to go through them because of time limitations. I'm going to actually play the three amigos, the buzz and bite, and the most recent example, which is the no excuses. If you want to see them in greater detail, simply put my name into YouTube. You will find literally hundreds of videos in multiple languages, and they are all available for you right now. You can download them, or you can write to me or a CVD, or if you want to use me as a resource on your campaigns, I'm available to you to help you create your own campaigns.